Welcome to the Ball Rock Pill podcast. I'm your host, Coach Koran Godwin, founder of ballhoggloves.com. My co-host, Stephen Bardo, Fox Sports analyst. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Koran. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. We're going to get right into it. Got a question for you. If you were a high school senior right now, class of 2019, I believe, so you're going into your senior year, okay? What college program would you choose right now, excluding Illinois, because we know you went there, and why?
I would choose Gonzaga University.
Okay.
Because Mark Few is a master at putting players in position to succeed. They have a tremendous development program. I remember Austin Day he bypassed every Pac-12 school to go to Gonzaga because his father, Darren Day, ex-NBA player, really loved what Gonzaga does to develop players and the family environment. I covered that program for years in the West Coast Conference for ESPN. Mark Few and Gonzaga is a gem. Spokane, Washington is a sleeper basketball market. They have tremendous support of that program. The weather's not great. There's not going to be a bunch of pretty honeys running around. So you're going to get your education and you're going to ball. So I would have to say Gonzaga University. What's your answer to that?
Oh man, I would have to go with Coach K and Duke. I think that when you talk about athletics and academics, they're unparalleled. You know, there's no program or very few that can give you the best of both worlds. Obviously, Coach K, being one of the best coaches, to ever coach the game, USA team, Duke, Final Fours, championships. But you know me, I always like to look off the court as well. And where do you see every Duke player that ever put on that uniform when they stop? When those sneakers stop squeaking. Where do they end up? They end up doing exactly what you're doing right now. They end up a broadcast analyst somewhere on ESPN or Fox. And, you can just run them down the list. Like, who do we have from Duke right now? Jay Billis, Jay Williams. I see Dante Jones up there. I see Carlos Boozer. I see
Ala Abdel Nabi.
Yeah. Who else? Shane Battier.
I was going to say Shane Battier's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk about branding, and we could talk about more in depth about school, because a lot of people are starting to challenge whether you need school or this and that. To me, obviously a book is a book, but when you really look at it, you want to go to school for the network and the brand of the school. That is the purpose, because you can obviously make it without college. They always say college isn't for everyone. But for me, why not take advantage of the network, both the people you meet while you're there and the alumni, because you tap into a network base outside of your basketball program. So when I look at Duke, I look at all the people that I can pick up the phone and call in the event that, I twist an ankle or you have a knee issue, you're pretty much set for life, Not to mention the academic branding of the school. You automatically have a job. Any entrepreneurial ventures that you want to go into, when they see Duke on your resume, that just puts you on a different playing field, and it's just a great school.
I can't disagree with that.
What would be your number two?
Wow, number two. When I look at a place now, Koran, I look at it. If I'm in high school, where are you going to play? You know what I mean? Like you can go to Duke, you can go to Kentucky, but where you play? So if I'm a kid that may not be a 5-star, maybe I'm a 4-star, I'm getting recruited by Duke and Kentucky and some of these other ones. I may look. I'm gonna go a little bit out of the box here. I may look at Texas, and here's why. You talk about money and you talk about network. Texas has one of the most underrated networks in the country. Texas is the forebear of what the United States is going to look like in 50 years. how the population is dispersed in Texas is how it's going to look in the United States in the next 50 years. So you're getting a head start on the way things are. Austin, Texas is probably the best college town / city in the country.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do. The music scene down there is ridiculous. There's opportunity galore, and it was at one point one of the fastest growing cities in America. And you get to play in the Big 12 Conference, which over the last decade, in my opinion, has been the best conference in college basketball. So, and you get to play for Shaka Smart, who gets it. He's younger. He can relate. He works Snapchat. He can work Instagram. He knows the dances. He knows the music. He can relate to players. And so I think that if you're gonna, if you can't go to Gonzaga, I'd say look at Texas, because the whole young man can be developed at Texas under Shaka Smart, in my opinion. Who's your second choice, Koran?
My second choice would probably be an Ivy League school, a place like Harvard, Yale, or if I wanted to get some of that sunshine on the West Coast, Stanford. Just staying in that network with what I call the elite. So I definitely choose one of those schools. It's great that you mentioned go where you can play, because I think I was talking to someone yesterday, and the people in the middle don't get any attention. So let's say you have two choices, an NC State or a smaller school, like a VCU, you can go to NC State, average 6 points a game. Your pro potential is probably not going to be there. And the same thing goes true if you go to VCU, average 6 points a game. But if you go to VCU and you average 20 points a game, now that spotlight's on you. Mm-hmm. And case in point, we talk about Jarius Lyles, a young man who that I work with, and him going to UMBC, which is probably one of the smallest schools, in the country. It's a commuter school. It's an honor school. Kids that go there are usually very bright, very smart, not known for athletics. And he just signed an NBA contract with the Utah Jazz. So the notion is always, if you can play, they'll find you. Mm-hmm. But when you really think about it, you have to be featured. You have to get your numbers, and you have to bring attention to yourself. And if you're choosing a school right now, you got to, if you don't play, they won't see you. So
that's right.
So that's definitely a great segue. I have some kids right now that have multiple offers. And, some Ivy League schools are starting to come to the table as well. So,
okay.
There's definitely some decisions to be made. Obviously, you have to be comfortable. You have to be in an environment where you can excel. But, go where you can play, go where you can make an impact, and go where you feel like it's going to help you, outside of your given sport. So that's some of the things I look at. As you always know, we always talk about business. We always talk about, things off the court. What sneaker company, all right, would you sign with right now, and why? Actually, not why. What would be your terms? Obviously, we know we have the Nike and Adidas, and the higher you go, the less likely you are to get your terms in your way. But what sneaker company would you look to sign with right now if you were one of these kids that just got drafted?
Man, I'm going with Hove. I'm going with Puma, because everything they seem to touch turns to gold. Rock Nation is changing the game, and anytime Jay-Z gets his name involved in something, it tends to take off and do very well. So I'm serious. If Puma came calling, I would go with Puma, just because, and you educated me on this a while back, the reach that organization has now, Rock Nation, and what they're able to do. There was an article I read last night. I believe she's a Latina lady who works for Rock Nation, is the top NFL agent right now. Just got Saquon Barkley, the second highest guaranteed money ever.
Wow.
Now, Saquon Barkley's a freak of an athlete, tremendous running back. But this Latina sister right here She is the real deal. And there's a managing partner in Rock Nation, Koran, who's been in the business for 30 years. He said she's the best he's ever seen.
Oh, wow.
So,
So
they have that kind of lineup at Rock Nation where the agents are top notch. The money people are top notch.
yeah.
The marketing people know what they're doing. So if there was a shoe company right now that I would get with Puma, just to have access to get into the Rock Nation family to be able to expand your brand. What about you?
Well, let me ask you the second part of that question. What would your terms be? Are you an equity guy? Are you I need to get as much endorsement money as possible right now in my career? If you're a rookie and you had a little bit of leverage, obviously because you're going to Puma, which is getting back into the game, what would you like? How would you like the deal to be structured?
I'll give you a quick story. Remember Spencer Haywood?
Oh, man.
Old school cat that challenged free agency in the NBA.
Yeah.
Phil Knight wanted to give him a percentage of Nike.
10%, yeah.
And his manager or someone suggested that he take the $250,000.
Yeah.
10% of Nike right now would look like what?
Woo!
He would have dwarfed Jordan in terms of money that's been made off the shoe.
Oh, yeah, billions. I think it was 13 billion they said in the article.
13 billion.
It was something crazy.
So as a young man, I would have chosen the equity because hopefully I'm going to work my tail off. I'm going to work until I can exhaust my talent and have confidence that I'm going to get a contract or two in the NBA, and then maybe be able to parlay that into overseas if I can't stick in the NBA. But you're going to make money right now. You don't need the money, but the equity piece can be that generational wealth that you're not even aware of right now. But if Puma's only going to get better. They're only going to get more market share. It's inevitable who they're aligned with. So I would go with the equity.
Okay. I would say probably New Balance.
Oh, wow.
New Balance is making strides now to get back into basketball. And I think we talked about this before. Whenever you have your own shoe, your shoe is usually custom made for you. All right. So some people say, I like Nike, I like Adidas, da-da-da. Well, you can hand them your favorite Nike and say, make my sneaker feel just like this to me, and whatever you're selling, they're selling. But I say New Balance because I think that I would ultimately have a lot of leverage there, and I would want a royalty. Rookies don't make a lot of money, on their shoe deals initially because they have to prove themselves. But they do sell sneakers. You do have your fan base. You do have the people from college that's going to support. You do have, people all across the world that may love your game as a rookie. So for me, I would look for New Balance as an opportunity to maybe get my own signature shoe, whereas the larger companies, you're not going to get a signature shoe. I mean, it took a while for some of the guys that are all-stars now to get that. Some of them still don't have their signature shoe. They have to wear, other people's shoes. So I would like to wear my shoe. And I would look for a large percentage in royalty for each shoe that's sold. I don't know if Penny Hardaway gets paid for what they call the foams right now. They call them the foams. And I don't know if they renamed them because he doesn't get I don't know that situation. But if he doesn't get a royalty, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, you're missing out on a lot of money.
Oh, my gosh. They brought the foams back, and every sneakerhead has that in their collection, So I want to be able to use that as an asset to where 20 years from now, when I'm not playing, somebody that buys, my sneaker, I still get my royalty.
That's right.
My $75 a shoe or my $50 a shoe, I need that. If you figure, let's just say you're getting $50 a shoe, and you sell 1,000, that's $50,000 royalty check, and that's not a lot of shoes.
That's true.
Let's say you come out the gate and you do very well. Or sometimes you don't even do well, but you win the slam dunk contest. How many people have went that route where you don't even know who the guy is? He was a slam dunk contest, and now he's all over and now you see sneaker, da-da-da. And so that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at that royalty because even right now, I remember Derek Coleman had a shoe. I remember British Knights, like some of those shoes people would bring back just because they remember it. it's nostalgic for them, and they get to be fly on the block, just because they have something that's rare. It's something that other people don't have, So you
That's true.
might end up in that category. So, you and I just got back from Vegas. It was a great trip. I told you to come on out there because it's a great opportunity to network hack, so to speak, and that means that you have the opportunity to see multiple people in one place, so you get a lot done. You and I sat down with a business manager, an NBA business manager, who's one of the people that we actually got the opportunity to sit down and speak with. And being that we had this podcast, we had a lot of questions for him because we are doing this podcast to give back, to really educate, players, parents, and people that just love the game and that are around the game. What were some of your takeaways from talking with this NBA business manager?
Well, that pretty much everybody needs a business manager. I related to you guys. I dated a young lady years back who had a business manager and said that this person might have been her most valuable player on her team, because anybody that's really successful, anybody that's dealing with a lot of money needs a team around them. And so it was refreshing to talk to this young man and understand, hear his stories of, success and some of the stories of struggle dealing with the mentality of young NBA players. And so it's ironic that players who grow up on teams all their lives fail to understand that basketball is life. It's an extension of life. And if you're gonna be on a team and be successful in basketball, why do you think that you can be individually successful in life? And so there were some really good things that we took away from that. But I that was the biggest thing that, everybody, if you think you can't afford it, you probably need a business manager at some point. And you may not be able to get the guy that we were talking with, but there's somebody out there for everyone. And that's kind of what I took away from it. What about you? What were some of the things that stuck out to you about our conversation with him?
Well, the athletes are much maligned about, spending all their money, the inability to save their money post career, so to speak. And when you hear the stories from the horse's mouth, you realize that there are a lot of things that come into play. And one of them is business acumen. Right. Two of them is the people that are around you. A lot of times these athletes are taking care of a lot of people.
That's true.
And, three, you kind of have empathy because there is a shifting of the dynamics. You may have a young man that come in the NBA at 20 or 21 years old, and now they're the breadwinner of their whole family. They are the millionaire. So even though they're still a kid in the eyes of the uncle, the granddad, and all that, they're actually the guy that everyone comes to now. So there's a fundamental shift in the family structure, which is tough because, he's still a kid, he's still learning, he's still growing, but at the same time, it may be hard for some people to steer this individual in the right direction because they're benefiting from him. It's his money, so to speak. Also, I wanted to know your take on what you thought about the debt structure. A lot of these guys have a lot of debt. Even while they're playing.
Man, that blew my mind, Koran, actually. No, I mean, look, like the examples that we talked about with the draft picks. I mean, they're in debt before they get their first check. That was unfathomable to me. I don't know why, because I'm a former player and I knew what guys did when they, first got a taste of something. But geez, man,
yeah,
really?
Well, you probably didn't think about it, and when you actually break it down, you don't get paid. Your first check is in November.
Exactly.
So where that $4,000 suit come from?
Yeah, man. I can understand being in a little bit of debt. Like you said, get a suit for the draft. Maybe get you a beat up used car or something if you don't already have one. I can see some of the basic stuff to where you're, maybe 10 grand, maybe 15 grand, not 100, 150, 200 grand in a hole before you get your first check. Because people keep forgetting about the Jay Williams story. That stuff happens, man. Cats
Yeah.
have millions of dollars and they make a bad decision, it's thrown out the window. So that was mind-boggling to me. I mean, what were you surprised at that, Karan, or what?
I mean, at first, I think you're surprised until you kind of bring it in and you think about our lives. Like, how many people right now are driving an SUV, and how much do SUVs cost? How much does a
True.
new Tahoe cost? I
About
mean,
80 to 90 grand.
so think about it. That's the same amount of debt, for somebody that
Mm,
just has a regular job. So I think that the debt structure is something that we're all dealing with as a society. I think most people are living paycheck to paycheck. I think stats show that. And I think that is just the mentality. But, coming out the NBA, it's a little bit different because they know the money's coming. So
right.
you almost have to have a shrewd business manager or a person around you that can turn off that faucet and say, hey, we're
Mm.
only going to, take this much because, when you think about it, they all need a car. They all need to get around. You all need a place to live. You can't live around, the common folk, so to speak, because people be, wanting your
Trying to,
autograph, having
yeah.
cousins come over so they can knock on your door or whatever. So it's not easy, but I think that there is a smart way to do it, but it's all about your circumstance. I think that, for you and I, our parents pretty much, held it down till we weren't close to the poverty line. Your dad, your dad's a professor, correct?
Yeah, just retired from a 54-year career at SIU.
Okay, so your home was pretty much stable. My mother was, held it down. My father had a great job, AT&T. So I think that, you and I were in position to where we can wait a little bit and not accrue so much debt. But if you take our same situation and I put you on the south side of Chicago, you have to get out of there as soon as possible.
That's real.
As soon as possible. And not just you, your niece, your cousins, because there are people that, maybe be in this inner city environment that may want to take advantage of your situation and your come up. And they may not like to hear no, they see the NBA. So you want to make sure that your family's taken care of. So that means probably buying a house right away. That means,
Mm.
buying multiple cars right away. Mom needs a car. Dad, you need to get them out of the situation. So I do have some empathy, but it seemed as if the bottom line is, you have to really continue to play well. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, in order to really put yourself, that one contract may not do it. You think it, you're like, oh, you're making $1 million a year. Well, after taxes, you're making 500 grand a year. That first contract's not going to set you up, to where you don't have to ever work again in life. You're going to have to be very smart with that income. And but if you are smart with that income and you do the right things, it's very hard to do it. But I think that you can. And in case in point, he talked about some of his overseas guys that don't even make a quarter what these NBA guys make. What was your take on that aspect of the conversation?
Well, that was really refreshing because that was kind of my path. Coffee breaks in the NBA. Felt like I was good enough to play in the NBA, but maybe didn't have the right habits, so to speak, on and off the court. But I was overseas quite a bit, and I made around the same money that he was talking about some of his clients, and I was so relieved to hear that they were going to be well off from shrewd money practices, keeping your expenses down, saving that money until you can figure out exactly what you want to do with it. And it's always simple, but it's not easy.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? There's
Oh
a lot of temptations, a lot of people, like you said, family tugging on you, things of that nature, people that had poured into you that they may want something out of it. And so to hear that some of those guys are doing very well was very encouraging. And that was something that might have been a high point for me in the conversation. What was your take on that, Karan?
Well, I saw that. I asked myself, what's the difference, between, these clients, the ones that did well and the ones that are struggling, after they finish playing basketball. And it seemed like, the guys that overseas, they actually listen. You know, obviously they weren't here. A lot of them don't have the distractions that you do when you're here because
Good point.
bigger. I mean, you're in the USA. You know, you got home. You got your home team. You know, there's people to hang out with. You're very, very comfortable overseas. Sometimes you're in countries where you don't speak the language. You don't know anyone. By the time you do, get acclimated to the environment, it's time to go to the next stop. You know, because you're for a year and then you're trying to move up and get a bigger and better contract. So I think that those guys, they're willing to listen. You know, when he sends the income statements and what's going on, they're probably reading it because they're in their house watching Netflix. You know, not to say those guys don't have fun and go out and party and all that type of stuff. Because as we well know, you know, I had a guy that was in Paris. I had a guy that was here. So there are some great places, but the majority of places you go are places where, you know, you really have a lot of time to think and strategize. So I think that those guys really listened to him. They took heed. Their expenses were a lot lower because they didn't have to pay for a car. Like, what do you need a car for in the States?
That's right.
You're overseas, where they give you a car and they give you housing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, you can have a house in the States, so to speak, but, you know, you don't need one. So you're really in a position where you can save. You're only going to be home for 45 days, if that, during the summertime.
True.
So, you know, during that time, you can budget something, you know, maybe, you know, be able to go on the trip with a significant other or, you know, just be home and hang out with the fellas for a little bit. But I took that part away where I just think that the overseas guys have a tremendous opportunity to set themselves up for life. The only problem is a lot of overseas guys I see, a lot of them don't have business managers, you know, because they don't feel like they can afford them.
That's right.
So, and in what I've seen, if you're making, you know, around 200 or more, you know, I think you can definitely afford the service and have somebody, you know, that can actually plan out your financial future.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
So, Stephen, great conversation today as always. Do you have anything else? Any other topics that came to mind?
No, we'll save it for the next time. But I think this was good, talking about you know, the money management and, you know, where you would go as a high school player. I think that's very helpful just to give, you know, because I think some of those questions or the answers that you gave, in particular your second choice, Ivy League, I think that was a surprise to people. And I think me saying Gonzaga was kind of a surprise. I think it surprised you as well. So
definitely,
you know,
and also Texas. Well, I didn't look at the University of Texas that way, but as soon as you said that, it just everything clicked because I know that that's an up and coming spot. Technology.
Yes.
That city is booming. I heard it's beautiful. I haven't been there since I was around 8 or 9 or so, but I do think I need to get back there and
Yes, you do.
kind of see what's going on. And the real estate, you know, it's affordable. I think that whenever you're looking at a college, you know, one of the questions that come to mind is, can I actually live here after I'm done playing? Because most people, you may live in an area where the economy isn't that good. There isn't much opportunity. So there's nothing like, even here, I live in the DMV in the DC area. If you go to George Washington, Maryland, American, Georgetown, you're right here in one of the best economies of the world. Obviously, the government can't fail, you know, so you're right here with plenty of opportunities, and you can use the branding of your school that everyone knows to pretty much, you know, tap into that economy. So that's another thing to think about, you know.
Sure.
But as always, great show, Stephen. Ball Rock Pill. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. And as always, God first, work until.
Peace.
Let's see here.